We are expecting to have a number of other participants. We'll start, however, on time, and then they can join us as and when they see fit. We are slightly tight for time today due to another commitment. So rather than waiting for additional participants to join, we are going to immediately initiate the webinar. Please feel free at any time to interrupt me during this webinar, either with questions or comments. You can do that either by using the reactions button at the bottom right of your screen and then clicking raise hand. And as soon as I see that, I'll pass you the microphone and you'll be able to make your comment or ask your question.
I can't hear you.
Or you can use... Say again, sir?
I can't hear you.
You can't hear me. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now, sir?
We can hear you, Andrew. I think it is Mr. Ahmed is having a issue. We can hear you.
Your voice is very low, sir.
Okay, okay, sir. I will try and speak louder and more clearly, so hopefully the audio will get through to you. So to continue where we left off, if you like to make a comment or an intervention, you can use the raise hand button, or I have the chat open at any time. Please feel free to make your comments there, and I'll then pass them into the discussion, and we can work on questions or comments which come through the chat as well. As you can see, Isabel has already started the recording of the session. As we normally do, the session is recorded and then put on our Tuesday Second Chance YouTube channel, where you can at any time go back to any of the editions of Tuesday Second Chance, both the South Asia edition, but we also have editions which we run in Southeast Asia and in the Western Indian Ocean on the same topics. So you can go there and you can review any of the presentations which we've done over the past approximately year. Also, as is normal, at the end of this session, we will put together a write-up of the session with the comments and questions and discussions which have come out, and that will be distributed to all the persons who have registered for the webinar. So without further ado, I'm going to move to the presentation for today. Isabel, can you confirm that my screen is live?
It's okay, Andrew.
Thank you very much. And today's case study is related to what we call Article 17 interdictions at sea. Article 17 refers to Article 17 of the UN Convention against illicit traffic of narcotic drugs and psychotropic substances, which is the main UN instrument for the suppression of the trafficking of narcotics. And Article 17 within that particular convention refers specifically to cooperation at sea between states. And it establishes a structure, a process, a mechanism of how each state may request the support of other states, be they flag states or otherwise, to allow the interdiction of narcotics on the high seas. As I'm sure everyone is aware, unlike, for instance, piracy, which attracts universal jurisdiction, the trafficking or smuggling of narcotics on the high seas does not attract the same international or universal jurisdiction, and therefore, on the high seas, the flag state of the vessel continues to retain that prime jurisdiction, and therefore any enforcement activities have to respect the primacy of the flag state. Article 17 is a mechanism for other states to request from the flag state that they be allowed to exercise their jurisdiction. The particular incident we're going to refer to is the incident involving the fishing vessel Captain Winston, and this occurred in the area of the Lesser Antilles in the Caribbean Sea in January of 2004. The objectives of today's presentation: as always, we're going to look at the facts of the operation, which was conducted to both intercept and subsequently board the fishing vessel Captain Winston. This was a vessel which was suspected of transporting narcotics. But we're going to look at all the wider issues related to the cooperation between coastal states, the verification of who the flag state was in this particular case, and subsequently the use of force during counter-narcotics operations. We'll also look at the implications of Articles 92.2 of UNCLOS, which is referring to flag state primacy, and Article 110, which discusses the right of visit. And the right of visit is very relevant in this case because it is a right which can be exercised by any warship or any state vessel at any time on the high seas. And we'll also have a look at what responsibilities we take upon ourselves when we decide to intercept or interdict a vessel, both on the high seas as well as in territorial seas, in regard to the well-being of any persons we may subsequently detain. So we're going to be looking at quite a variety of issues which come out of this particular case study. This is the Captain Winston, a very typical fishing vessel for the region where it operates, reportedly under a flag of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and with a length of around 18 meters. Now, this vessel had already drawn the attention of law enforcement authorities prior to this incident. In this case, it was the UK Customs Agency, and the UK was involved, as we will see in a few minutes, because this particular region contains not only independent island states, but it also contains overseas territories of a number of other states, one of them being the United Kingdom, in this case based on the island of Antigua. The analysis of the UK Customs at the time indicated that the vessel was being used to unload narcotics from larger motherships, which were transporting it likely from the South American continent. And this transshipment was taking place outside the territorial seas of the various island states or island territories in the region. What would then happen is that the smaller boat would take a part of the cargo from the larger mothership for eventual distribution or transshipment within the islands. On the date in question, the 18th January of 2004, she was reported to have departed from the port of Kingston in St. Vincent at approximately midnight. Now, it's very worth looking at the area which we're dealing with. As you can see, this is a chain of islands on the eastern edge of the Caribbean Sea. And these islands have become of critical importance to issues related to narcotics trafficking because they provide a twofold functionality for the trafficking cartels. First of all, they are the road, you could say, the maritime road, which is used to transport narcotics northwards from the Southern American continent towards North America. The second function for which they are used, and this is becoming ever more important, is that they are also used as the departure point for larger shipments from Southern America, and in this case, the Caribbean, towards both Africa and Europe. So this chain of islands, because of its location, has become a critically important region, both for the cartels when it comes to smuggling their product, but also for law enforcement agencies when it comes to interdicting their activities. As you can see, there are multiple islands in this chain, which stretch from Grenada in the south all the way up to Antigua and Barbuda in the north. And as I pointed out earlier, these islands consist of a mixture of independent island states, but also a number of overseas territories belonging to France, the United Kingdom, the Netherlands, and also the United States. So you can see that there is a very wide involvement of both states, but also, as you can imagine, of agencies in this particular region because of the multinational nature of this chain of islands. After the vessel the suspect vessel departed St. Vincent, it was initially tracked by a surveillance aircraft, a C-26 surveillance aircraft, operated by the Regional Security System Air Wing. The Regional Security System is a very interesting organization of the small island states within the region who have pooled their limited resources in order to be able to actively engage with these smuggling issues more effectively. And one of the assets which they have are two of these C-26 surveillance aircraft, which are operated by mixed crews out of Barbados. And this regional security system is a key part of how the regional countries have engaged with the problem of drug trafficking. It's a very, very robust system, and it's also supported significantly by the outside actors who are also present within the region. So the United States, UK, France, and the Netherlands. The aircraft tracked the suspect vessel, and it was noted that it exited the territorial seas of St. Vincent, but then stopped for a significant period of time. And this is considered to be suspicious behavior for this type of vessel. No vessel makes money by remaining in a single location, not even a fishing vessel of this type. It's a trawler. So a trawler needs to be continuously moving in order to catch fish. This vessel had stopped for a significant period of time before then proceeding on a northerly course and making sure it remained outside the territorial seas of the various islands. And this map shows Kingston in St. Vincent, from which the vessel left. And as I said, it proceeded first westwards outside the territorial seas limit, which you can see there, stopped in that location for a significant period of time before then again proceeding northerly direction. And this is a very typical suspect behavior of vessels engaged in transshipment. It had been observed in the past, and because of this activity and the information from the UK Customs, this craft was deemed to be of significant interest to law enforcement. In fact, based on the information from the UK Customs and the operating profile of the vessel, the French authorities on the island of Guadeloupe decided to deploy a patrol vessel, and it's the patrol vessel you can see in the picture, the P-722 Violette. This is a vessel belonging to the Gendarmerie Maritime, which is a hybrid naval police organization. So it is very much military, but exercising police powers. And they are responsible for much of the law enforcement activities, not only within the French mainland, but also in French overseas territories like Guadeloupe. The Violette departed Pointe-à-Pitre, which is the port in Guadeloupe, at about 20 or 8:30 in the evening of the same day. So it was waiting for the suspect vessel to continue proceeding north and arrive in the vicinity of Guadeloupe Island. The mission assigned to the Violette was relatively straightforward. It was, first of all, to locate the suspect vessel, and in this regard, it would be supported by aviation assets, to confirm the flag of the vessel, because it was not absolutely clear. And the reason why the French authorities wished to confirm the flag was to allow them to make this request under Article 17, as I described earlier, of the UN Convention, from the flag state in order to be able to board the vessel. And therefore, the crew of the Violette also has to be prepared to conduct that boarding once permission had been received from the flag state. As already mentioned, the activities of the patrol vessel continue to be supported by aviation assets initially provided by the regional security system. In fact, the patrol vessel intercepted the suspect craft the next day on the 19th of January at around 5:30 in the morning. And at that time, the vessel was approximately 42 nautical miles west of Basse-Terre in Guadeloupe. So you can see Guadeloupe on the right of the picture, and you can see the location where the Captain Winston was interdicted. 42 nautical miles, clearly outside the territorial seas. So therefore, territorial jurisdiction would not have been sufficient to conduct a boarding of the vessel. The patrol vessel, on arriving in the vicinity of the Captain Winston, hailed the fishing vessel on VHF and asked the master to confirm both the name of his vessel and the flag of his vessel, while also informing the master that there was no visible flag on his vessel, and that was in contravention of international law, and that he was also within the French exclusive economic zone. The importance of the latter statement, that he was within the exclusive economic zone, was the fact that the crew of the patrol vessel noted that the fishing vessel actually had fishing gear in the water. And therefore, had the Captain Winston been engaged in fishing activities and was within the French EEZ, this could have potentially served as the jurisdictional basis required to conduct the boarding. And it's very important, I think a very important point which comes out of this is that although you may proceed on an initial jurisdictional assumption when conducting this type of operation, it's important that any potential jurisdictional basis is identified and potentially exploited later on, because it may be the only jurisdictional basis on which you can conduct enforcement actions. Having noted that the Captain Winston had this fishing gear in the water, the master of the vessel was informed that any fishing in the area was subject to French jurisdiction, and therefore that the French patrol vessel intended to come alongside and conduct a boarding on the basis of fisheries inspection. Clearly, the interest in the vessel was related more to narcotics trafficking, but the master of the Captain Winston quickly identified this alternative jurisdictional basis on which to conduct any boarding actions as required. And here you can see the interception of the Captain Winston. You can see clearly that the vessel has some form of fishing gear trailing in the water. On the top right of the picture, you can see a French maritime patrol aircraft, which had taken over from the RSS aircraft to continue to provide aerial surveillance during this interception phase. So in response, a person who identified himself as the master of the Captain Winston replied to the French patrol vessel. He said, "Look, I'm not engaged in fishing, so you have absolutely no basis on which to board my vessel. This vessel is the Captain Winston, and I'm actually under the US flag." Now, this is a very typical response to attempted law enforcement efforts in the region, that a vessel claims a flag which is not its own, and in many cases it will be either the US or the French flag. Clearly, in this case, the French flag would have been inappropriate because it would have immediately given the patrol vessel jurisdiction. So what the master of the Captain Winston decided to do was claim that he was under the US flag in order to attempt to avoid any jurisdiction being exercised over his vessel. Clearly, the response of the master on board the patrol vessel was, "Look, our information is you're under the St. Vincent flag. You're claiming that you're under the US flag. We intend to board your vessel that in order to verify which of these is actually the true flag of your vessel." The master of the suspect vessel, knowing that he was engaged in illicit activity, said, "I do not accept your jurisdiction," but was warned that he had to stop his vessel immediately, and failure to do so could have resulted in the use of force in order to ensure that he complied. What was happening here was the fact that the Captain Winston apparently was claiming a flag of convenience, so claiming a different flag at different times in order to avoid jurisdiction. And in fact, shortly before 6 o'clock, the personnel aboard the Captain Winston actually hoisted a US flag in order to demonstrate that their assertion that they were registered under the US registry. But if a vessel, and this is where Article 92.2 of UNCLOS comes in, if a vessel decides to sail under 2 or even potentially more flags, according to its convenience, in other words, to avoid enforcement efforts, effectively it becomes a stateless vessel. It loses its right to the protection of any of those flags. More importantly, under Article 110 of UNCLOS, the right of visit allows authorized vessels, so state vessels, and clearly the patrol vessel falls under this definition, to conduct a boarding to verify the right to fly the flag. So the boarding is not there to search the vessel. It's literally to go on board and say, okay, you're saying you're under the US flag. Could I see your registration certificate? And so on and so forth. So it's a visit rather than an inspection. It's a visit rather than a search. And it's there to allow state vessels or authorized vessels to verify what is being said to them by suspect vessels, in this case regarding the registration of that vessel. The master of the Captain Winston continued to refuse to stop his vessel. At this point in time, various efforts were underway ashore to verify exactly under which flag the vessel was. Clearly, it was found that she was not under a US flag and that she was actually under the St. Vincent flag, and therefore she had violated her right to protection of the flag state. And after a number of attempts to have the vessel stop by means of both verbal warnings and visual warnings using signal flags, at 12:40 that day, the commanding officer of the Violette received authorization to use warning shots in an attempt to stop the vessel. Very interesting in this case, you can see that the master of the patrol vessel, the CO of the patrol vessel, has to receive external authorization to do this. This is one method of providing that authorization. In some cases, in some countries, the master of the vessel could use potentially warning shots and use of force without authorization. As the patrol vessel positioned itself to fire these warning shots, the persons on board the Captain Winston were observed throwing a number of packages into the sea, at least 5. And in response to this, the commanding officer of the patrol vessel asked the Maritime patrol aircraft, which was now the French Falcon, to continue surveying the vessel while the patrol vessel recovered these packages. And on recovering the packages, which were both suitcases and sacks, these were found to contain a number of packages inside them containing what was suspected to be narcotics. The patrol vessel resumed the pursuit. At this time now, the Captain Winston has increased speed and is attempting to head to the territorial seas of another island state, in this case St. Kitts and Nevis, in order to further complicate the jurisdictional issues. The master was informed that he was now subject to being boarded. St. Vincent had confirmed that they gave permission under Article 17 of the Vienna Narcotics Convention, and therefore the French patrol vessel had an absolute jurisdiction over this vessel on the high seas to conduct the boarding. And you can see from the initial interception position at the bottom of this screen that the particular incident had moved a significant distance northwards, and now the attempt of this vessel was to head to the territorial seas of St. Kitts and Nevis in an attempt to further thwart the efforts of the law enforcement agencies and further complicate the jurisdictional questions which were being addressed. At a few minutes past 1 o'clock, the patrol vessel opened fire with 10 warning shots. The initial response was not to stop. In fact, the master of the Captain Winston actually attempted to ram the patrol vessel, so maneuvered violently. This resulted in the CO of the patrol vessel asking now for permission to engage directly with fire in order to protect both his vessel against these attempts and also ensure that the Captain Winston did in fact come to a stop. However, about 15 minutes later, the Captain Winston did stop. The master on board recognized that he was not going to be able to escape the attention of law enforcement agencies, and he began to comply with instructions. 8 individuals were found aboard the vessel. The vessel was searched. The master was completely unable to provide any proof of the flag state of his vessel. And because it was not clear yet where or even if the vessel was registered, the French authorities decided to act in a manner that would not infringe any flag state rights eventually, should a flag state be identified. So what happened was a number of the gendarmerie personnel remained on board the Captain Winston. The Captain Winston was escorted towards shore. The crew on board were restrained and were not permitted to move around the vessel in order to ensure that they did not interfere with any evidence. Unfortunately, however, at about 5 minutes past 11 that night, it was noted that one of the crew was missing. This individual had earlier had his restraints temporarily removed in order to be able to use bathroom facilities. When they were replaced, his hands were secured rather than behind his body. His hands were secured in front of his body because he had indicated that his arms were in a certain amount of discomfort. And apparently, this individual had taken the opportunity to escape overboard into the water and was now no longer accounted for. On recognizing the fact that this individual was missing, both the Violette and the Captain Winston began search operations in the area. They were supported by various aviation assets and additional vessels that were dispatched to the area. Unfortunately, the missing individual was not located. It's worth noting that when this individual was noted as missing, the 2 vessels were still a significant distance offshore, 20 nautical miles. However, due to extremely clear visibility conditions that night, and the fact that there were lights on elevated areas ashore at up to 1,000 meters, it potentially gave this individual the impression that the coastline was far closer than it actually was. And he may have been under the impression that he was as little as 2 nautical miles offshore rather than 20 nautical miles. And therefore, it's possible that this individual made an attempt to escape and swim to what he thought was a relatively close shoreline. Excuse me. So, in summary, this was a complex incident, and it saw close cooperation between various states and regional organizations to both detect and intercept a vessel suspected of narcotics smuggling. Although it initially started with an attempt to conduct a boarding under Article 17 of the UN Convention on Illicit Traffic of Drugs, so that is a boarding with flag state permission, because the flag state was no longer clear during the actual interdiction, the state rights under Articles 92.2 of UNCLOS, so the concept that if a vessel attempts to exchange its flags as convenient, it becomes effectively stateless, and Article 110, the right of visit, actually provided the effective legal basis on which to conduct the boarding. Because the vessel was initially non-compliant, this required a limited use of force in order to ensure that the boarding could be conducted. And unfortunately, after the apprehension of the vessel, one suspect individual went missing following the apprehension of the vessel and its crew after the boarding operation. And the questions which I'd like to potentially discuss, or the issues which I think in my mind come out of such an issue, is first of all, how good are our processes to authorize and use force? Clearly, there is an escalation process which has to happen. Sometimes there is a consultation process with authorities ashore, be they military authorities who are actually giving the authorization, and be they legal authorities who are giving advice on whether force is appropriate and justified in that case. But any decision which is being taken within the framework of limited time. And in this case, we saw that this attempt to enter the territorial seas of St. Kitts and Nevis in order to further complicate jurisdiction meant that decisions had to be taken in a relatively quick time frame. And it's important to ask ourselves, what about our processes to authorize force and use force? Are they sufficiently robust? Are they sufficiently safe? Are they sufficiently quick to allow us to respond to this type of incident? We saw also here very, very robust regional cooperation between a number of states and a number of regional organizations in order to ensure that this interception happened. What about the areas where we are operating? Do we have that pre-established regional cooperation? Can we rely on smooth communication between the various players involved? Are these communication channels already established, or do we have to establish them on the fly during the incident? The third issue is the rights of states to board vessels. You know, when we have vessels who are either stateless or effectively stateless because they're using multiple flags, what are the rights of both our state and other states in the region to board these vessels? Do we understand the concept of the right of visit as outlined in Article 110 of UN Convention on the Law of the Sea? Can we take action against a vessel which is stateless? Do we have the domestic legal instruments to do that? And what other legal bases can we use? In this case, we saw the commanding officer of the French vessel initially addressing the issue from a fisheries perspective in order to generate that jurisdiction. So do we have the legal advice, the legally trained individuals in place to quickly identify these potential additional jurisdictional bases in order to allow us to conduct an effective operation? The final point refers to this unfortunate loss of life, in this case, due to an individual attempting to escape custody. And it's important to understand what are our obligations towards these apprehended individuals. Although they are suspects in a potential criminal case, that does not mean that they lose all their individual rights. They still have a right to be protected from danger and given their basic care as is required. So are we aware of what our obligations are in these particular cases? Are our operational personnel on the front line aware of what their obligations are towards these individuals? So in essence, are we protecting ourselves against any liability that may be found versus individuals or the state, should any of these apprehended individuals subsequently decide to initiate legal proceedings because he or she feel that they were not treated in an appropriate manner during the arrest and apprehension stages? So these are very important issues today. We're seeing, even in the case of piracy, the rights of the apprehended suspect pirates taking center stage rather than the crime of piracy itself in some cases. So it's important that we're aware of what our obligations are. We sensitize our personnel towards these obligations in order not to provide any basis for eventual complaint by apprehended persons. So these are some of the points which I've taken away from this particular case. I'm going to open the floor now. I've stopped screen sharing. I'm going to open the floor to any comments, remarks, observations which you would like to make from your end. As I said, please feel free to switch on your microphone and comment live. There's also the chat, and we can look at how these issues affect your particular states, your particular agencies in your particular region, rather than just their relevance to the Caribbean, as in this particular case study. So the floor is open if there are any comments or remarks. So I think one of the issues which is really central here is the use of force. In this case, as you can see, the commanding officer of the patrol vessel had to refer to his authorities ashore in order to be able to use even warning shots and subsequently use of force to protect and interdict this particular vessel. Is this the best model for use of force? Are there other models which can be used? Can we delegate larger amounts of authority to the particular individuals at sea? And what are the pitfalls of that? It would be very interesting to hear your views on that particular issue when it comes to use of force and how far we can delegate this authority. Speaking from my background, where I operated, the use of force decision was delegated all the way down to the commanding officer, although it was recommended and encouraged that when and if possible, the commanding officer would at least advise authorities ashore prior to making use of force. But the authority was there. In some cases, the authority is not there and must be requested from authorities ashore. Both of these have advantages and both of these have disadvantages. The advantage of having the delegated use of force all the way down is force can be used as and when required without any lengthy approval process. And that may be necessary due to the timeliness of the response. The flip side of that is you are putting all the responsibility potentially on a very young lieutenant or sub-lieutenant who may be commanding a patrol boat, and you have to ensure that that particular officer is trained, is equipped with the knowledge and the ability to identify all the potential legal issues in order to take that decision in an appropriate manner. But I'd be very interested in hearing what the thoughts of participants are regarding which level the use of force decision should reside at. Should it be all the way down to the tactical level, or should it be something which is held more at operations center and operational level? So I'm not sure if there are any comments or remarks. Not at this stage. Excellent. It's also very important to...
Yeah, sir.
Oh, go ahead, please, sir.
Yeah, I'm from Maldives.
Good morning and welcome, sir. Or good afternoon. I'm not sure how far your time zone is.
Yeah, it's morning 10:45.
Good morning, sir.
Yeah, so in Maldives, we have, like, if it's a ship, the commanding officer have all the rights to use the power when necessary while he's on patrol or anything. But if it's a small patrol boat, the captain has given the full authority to do that. We don't have to take any other, when we face a problem, we don't have to ask. So when he's going to patrol, he has all the power to use it.
So if I could follow up on that, sir, you don't have to, clearly. So the authority is delegated. In practice, however, would you tend to consult with authorities ashore if time and circumstances allow?
Yeah. Yes, sir.
Okay. Because it's the advantage, as I've said, of delegated authority is the quick response. However, it's always useful to have that ability to be able to consult with authorities ashore. they have access to potentially more legal advice, and they can provide potentially more of a green light for the actions that you're about to take. But that's very interesting that it's delegated, and that the level of delegation depends on the size of the vessel, and therefore I assume the rank of the individual evolves, if I'm correct, yes?
Yes, sir. So, and did you hear about the two incident which happened on this month in the Indian Ocean, that Sri Lankan Navy has apprehended two vessels with narcotics, and I think there was in international sea, but when I checked, I didn't see any other information on that. If you want, I can share the Twitter of that to you in this.
Yes, please. If you can share it within the chat, that would be excellent. I'm not familiar with this particular incident. I do know that there has been a significant uptick in narcotics interdictions in the Indian Ocean. And one of the reasons for that is to do with the fact that the EU naval presence within the Indian Ocean, EU NAVFOR, has turned its focus to narcotics trafficking as a particular threat. And in a relatively short period of time, there were between 4, I think even 6 interdictions, large-scale interdictions of narcotics. So clearly, this is a threat which is very present within the region. And I think that it's something where, going forward, regional cooperation, both on the information exchange side as well as on the operational side, will be extremely relevant and important. What I have seen also within the Indian Ocean region is that many of the smuggling vessels are actually stateless vessels, so vessels which have no flag, which is a very interesting parallel to this particular incident which we're discussing here in the Caribbean. So it's really worth looking at what lessons have been learned in the Caribbean in terms of regional cooperation and the ways in which you can interdict these stateless vessels, and perhaps using those as the basis for regional cooperation within the Indian Ocean region. So thank you very much for that particular article. I'm having a look at it now. Yes, clearly, it again appears to be one of these stateless vessels. In fact, it was a stateless vessel in this particular case, which you have mentioned, where the Sri Lankan Navy has conducted this interdiction. I think it's very important in this case to ensure that you have the right legal framework within your domestic laws to ensure that you can exercise jurisdiction over stateless vessels. Many people assume that because a vessel is stateless, I have jurisdiction. That's not completely the case. The vessel may be stateless. Clearly, the individuals on board are unlikely to be stateless. So it would be very, very useful if you wish to conduct this type of operation against stateless vessels on the high seas, that your domestic law specifically provides you with that authorization. And that will avoid any subsequent issues during the legal process if you are going to be conducting a prosecution of the suspect persons. In the case of international efforts, so for instance, EU NAVFOR, the vessels are not being arrested because there is no authority to arrest those vessels or the people on board. What is happening is the narcotics are being removed and destroyed. Clearly, no one can object to this because the narcotics are an illicit substance and there is no flag state to object. But the vessels are being released because there is no legal jurisdiction over them. So if you want to stop these vessels, confiscate the narcotics, and prosecute the suspects, then you're going to need something in your domestic law which provides you with jurisdiction over stateless vessels on the high seas. But it's very interesting to see how this issue is evolving within the Indian Ocean region. How important do you think regional cooperation is going to be going forward in this particular issue? There is clearly a significant difference between the Caribbean and Indian Ocean on the basis of size. You're operating in a much larger operational area. The states involved are much further spread out, and there are large areas of high seas where no coastal state has effective jurisdiction. So how important do you think that regional cooperation and regional communication within the Indian Ocean region is going to be in addressing this threat? I think this is an especially pertinent question, considering we have IFC IOR with us here today, because one of their roles is that information exchange and communication across the region. So how important is it going to be to ensure that these efforts to address, in this case, narcotics smuggling across the region, how important do you think this communications and cooperation layer is going to be? I'd be interested in hearing any views, especially from IFC IOR as perhaps the premier communications and cooperation platform in the region. Can this take place without this type of cooperation? It's worth asking whether any individual state can effectively suppress this particular issue, because in contrast again to the Caribbean, we're talking about a region where there are capable and effective coast guards and navies, larger coast guards and navies, rather than these very, very small single boat navies or single boat coast guards, which we see in the Caribbean. So clearly within the Indian Ocean region, we are not talking about the same limitations on resources. However, on the flip side of that, we are talking about a much larger area which needs to be covered. So given that despite the increased resources or the larger amount of resources available to the coastal states within the Indian Ocean, these being offset by the larger area which they need to cover, does this trans-regional cooperation still have the same importance that it has in the Caribbean? Or is it potentially possible for one or a couple of states in close cooperation to suppress this traffic without having to have this trans-regional cooperation? My view would be that no, it is not something that a single state can or even should try to address, because the efforts of a single state will never be as effective as pooled efforts. That's my personal view on this. And I think that the continued cooperation in these issues across the Indian Ocean region, using both existing cooperation structures, because there are already a number of both bilateral and multilateral cooperation structures within the region, but also, if necessary, new structures similar to the regional security system as established in the Caribbean. These are going to be the only really effective and durable solutions to this problem, because the problem is geographically far too big, and the problem is also conceptually far too big, in that it has so many facets: the financial side, the trafficking side, the side of the shore-based organization. It has too many facets to be effectively addressed by a single state. So my preference would always be to see these issues addressed on a regional basis. And this has been extremely effective in the Caribbean, with these small states coming together to cooperate. And I think that a similar model could potentially be useful for the Indian Ocean region, albeit tailored to the needs of that particular region. No one-size-fits-all process. The last point, which I'm going to just flag and see if there are any comments or discussion of, is this issue of the obligation of the apprehending state, the apprehending agency towards any individuals who are taken into custody. This is something which has always been an issue, and now perhaps is even more in public view, because we have social media, which is immediately exposing any potential mistreatment of apprehended individuals. We have wide access to both the social media and also to legal advice and legal support from various agencies and from various NGOs. And therefore, the need and the importance of ensuring that the individual rights of apprehended persons are respected is absolutely key and critical to any law enforcement effort at sea. Remember that the reputation of our agencies, the agencies for whom we work, and the law enforcement agencies that we represent is a very valuable asset. And any damage to that reputation, either by actual actions which undermine the individual rights of persons, or at least alleged actions which undermine the rights of individuals, those are going to affect and impact our reputation as an agency, as an organization. And that's reputational damage that I'm sure no organization needs, and which can relatively easily be avoided. It's important to ensure that we have the procedures in place to make clear to all our personnel that the rights of any apprehended individuals are X, Y, and Z. They have to be respected, whatever the circumstances of the particular case, whether it's a case of smuggling, whether it's a case of trafficking, whether it's a case of potential murder, whatever the case is, at the point that individuals are apprehended, these are still suspects. They haven't been convicted of a crime, and therefore we really need to do everything within our capabilities to ensure that the individual rights of these apprehended persons are respected. That doesn't mean treating them with, as we say in English, kid gloves. So treating them in a way which is excessively considerate of their individual needs, but it does mean that we treat them in a manner which respects the basic human rights, that they are not mistreated, that their health issues are addressed immediately, that they are not put in any further danger, and that they are not put in situations which are degrading or equivalent to torture. And it's important that we train our personnel to do that, and that we provide the facilities on board our vessels to make sure that this can be done. I'm not sure if there are any comments or questions about this last point. I think it's pretty clear, and I think that those of us who are involved in maritime law enforcement are pretty familiar with this issue. Olivier, good morning.
Good morning, Andrew. Good morning, all. Just a clarification for the last point you are talking about. In the case of Captain Winston, the issue was rather kid club. I mean, the guy was handcuffed in front instead of in the back, because he complained about pain. And this paved the way to his escape, because being handcuffed in front, then he could try to swim. So there is also sometimes overlapping, I would say, or confusion, I would say, or issues between this balance of security and safety. And in this case, the crew wanted to be cool, to be fair, to be friendly, I would say, and as a result, there was a breach in security, and the guy could escape. So I wanted to make sure that this case was clearly identified on the Captain Winston.
Yeah, that's a very good point, Olivier. It's a very fine balance between, you know, respecting the individual rights of apprehended persons, and yet at the end of the day, ensuring both the safety of your personnel, but also the safety of the apprehended persons. This individual was only encouraged to make that escape attempt because of the fact that his restraints were removed from behind his back and were placed in front of his body. And because of that, he decided to attempt what would actually result in the loss of his life. So you have to protect not only yourselves from the suspects, you have to protect the suspects from themselves. Removing items from the suspects with which they could harm themselves, for instance. Self-harming is something which is very, very real as a threat when you've apprehended an individual. So removing any items which could be used as ligatures, any items which could be used to cut themselves, and so on and so forth, is clearly high on your level of priorities to protect that suspect from themselves. Once you've taken them into custody, they are your responsibility, and therefore you have to ensure that not only are they not a threat to your crew and to wider society, but also not a threat to themselves. And this is a very sensitive subject. It's something where you have to really put some thought into it, and where the experiences which you can take from other agencies are a very, very valuable tool. Because mistakes have been made in the past by various agencies, law enforcement agencies, police forces, etc. And it's important to look at those mistakes and use them as a learning tool to avoid further mistakes in the future, because these mistakes are very, very costly. They are involving the lives of individuals, and therefore they really need to be avoided if and when you can avoid them. So thank you very, very much for that point. Very, very relevant, Olivier. Not sure if there are any other further comments or remarks. So if there is nothing further, first of all, I'd like to thank you for your participation today. Isabel has just put in the chat the link to our YouTube channel, where you can see this and other previous editions of Tuesday Second Chance. And I'll encourage you to go there, because there are some very interesting discussions even in other regional seminars which we've done, and other points which have come up. And it's always interesting to see which are the issues which are of most concern in a particular region. So I do encourage you to visit our Tuesday Second Chance YouTube channel. I would also now like to ask everybody, if possible and if available, if they could switch on their webcams very briefly, and that will allow Isabel to take a brief screenshot of the activity for our publicity materials, which are in our monthly newsletter and various other places, our Twitter and LinkedIn channels. So if I could ask everybody who has a webcam available to switch it on at this time, and I'll hand over to Isabel to coordinate the photograph. Isabel, in your good hands.
Thank you, Andrew. Sorry, I was not visible. A lot of Cumario colleagues are there. So 1 second. Okay, thank you very much, and hope that everybody enjoyed this session, very early session. So thank you, Andrew.
Thank you, Isabel. It's only early for us. It's not early for many of the participants. So we're the only ones who can complain
Yes.
about that. But anyway, I'd like to thank everybody for joining us. I'd like to thank you for your comments and your remarks. I look forward to welcoming you again to Tuesday Second Chance, and you'll be receiving the usual calling notice when we have the next edition scheduled. And again, I'll repeat it again, very importantly, please do visit our YouTube channel, look at the past editions of the webinar, and take the opportunity to see what's on the minds of colleagues and agencies, both within your region, but also outside your region in other areas of the Indian Ocean. Okay. So thank you again.
Andrew.
Yes, Olivier.
Andrew, if I may, I'd like to thank you very much, Andrew and Isabel, for this first series of amazing Tuesday Second Chance. I think it is the last one of the season, and the next season, I would say, will begin by September, probably. I don't know. Isabel, you are leaving us. Thank you so much for your work. I hope you will be I would say very happy in your next assignment, that is with another project with Expertise France, and we hope to see you sometimes. So please come and visit us. You're all colleagues of Primario, and I would like to say also that. Isabel is also a little bit our intelligence officer, since she's in charge. She was in charge of the early warning on internet. This is the expert who is extracting valuable information from the open source on internet. And for a project for Primario, it's a very valuable thing. Thank you very much, Isabel. Andrew, I hope to see you in Tuesday Second Chance next. I know you are also leaving the project for other things, but I hope you will be able to dedicate some times your expertise and your fantastic way of telling stories, if I may say so, in a future edition of Tuesday Second Chance. Thank you to the audience, and see you soon, I hope.
Thank you very much, Olivier, and wishing everybody a wonderful day, and look forward to welcoming you again to a future edition of Tuesday Second Chance.
I want to say something, because
Sure,
when you said to open the camera, I was not ready, so I was little late to open the camera. So I'm sorry.
Isabel, up to you again. You have a second shot to take.
Thank you.
Did you notice how quickly Glenn came back when he heard there was...
So thank you very much for
Yeah,
your
and
work.
it was my pleasure, and actually we got very good information, and I hope that we will get more chances like this again soon. Thank you very
We'll
much.
definitely carry on, sir. Thank you. Have a good day to everybody. Look forward to seeing you again.
Thank you. Bye-bye.